Ready to book that Australia New Zealand cruise? Hold on. We just got back from a 2 week journey and sharing what we wish we knew before that trip that can save you time, money, and frustration. Plus, stick around as we reveal the one cruise planning tip that will transform your experience up next. Now, if you cruise the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, or even Alaska, yes, we've all heard that we're not allowed to bring fruits or vegetables off the ships in ports of call. But Australia and New Zealand take things one step further. They are really strict about biosecurity and don't allow you to take anything off the ship except bottled water. This means no morning coffee, and not even prepackaged granola bars for a midday snack. We heard multiple announcements about this restriction every day before heading ashore, and we were warned that the countries conduct random bag checks and guests could be fined for not adhering to the rules. We also need to complete declarations when entering each country for the first time. These laws are in place to protect the environments from foreign pests and disease. New Zealand in particular is serious about this, aiming to be predator-free by 2050. With recent changes in tourism regulations, more and more destinations are starting to require visas to enter. While we did know that we needed visas, applying for them slipped our minds until the last minute. Luckily, the turnaround time is quick, but it will still take you some time. You'll need to download 2 separate apps, one for Australia and the other one for New Zealand, and input all the pertinent information. Once completed, we received our Australian visas almost immediately, with our New Zealand visa taking about 24 hours to process. When budgeting, you should also be aware that each of these visas come with a fee. The Australian visa is pretty inexpensive, around 20 Australian dollars, which is roughly $13 per person. However, the New Zealand visa is a bit more expensive, costing about 117 New Zealand dollars, which is roughly 67 US dollars per person. Speaking of New Zealand, our particular cruise focused heavily on New Zealand with only 2 Australian ports of call, but there are various itineraries that you're going to want to review. For those who want to explore the Great Barrier Reef, pick a cruise that sails on the northern Australian coast. These itineraries will still likely start in Sydney, but will most likely call on ports like Cairns, Port Douglas, and Brisbane. If you want to explore more of southern Australia, pick an itinerary that includes ports like Melbourne, Adelaide, Kangaroo Island, and Tasmania. Further, you should consider extending your stay to explore your embarkation and disembarkation ports as well. You could spend days in just Sydney or Auckland alone, so pick an itinerary length that will allow for this, keeping your budget and vacation time in mind. Many of the cruises in the region are quite long, with quite a number of itineraries, usually lasting up to 14 days. With these itineraries visiting so many ports of call, we assumed these would be offered by lines like Holland America, Princess Cruises, and some luxury lines. To our surprise, we saw a variety of ships from a variety of cruise lines while in the region, and many of them offer very similar itineraries. So while Holland America's Westerdam or Nordam is a solid choice when taking an Australia and New Zealand cruise, they're not the only ones. Both Holland America line ships would be a great choice because of their enrichment. But if you're into enrichment, Princess Cruises currently has 2 ships sailing the region as well. If you want something a little bit more family focused, Carnival Splendor offers 9 and 10 night sailings. And Royal Caribbean's Anthem and Ovation of the Seas also visits many of the same ports. Not to mention, Celebrity Edge is one of the newer, larger ships sailing in Australia. In 2026, Norwegian Spirit will offer similar itineraries. In fact, there'll be 14 different cruise lines in the region next year. So do your homework when it comes to picking not only your itineraries, but choosing the right ship for your travel party. We're accustomed to getting foreign currency at our local bank before traveling internationally. While we did get Australian dollars, we weren't able to get New Zealand dollars prior to our departure. However, honestly, this didn't matter much, as both countries are primarily cashless. Almost everywhere we went used tap and pay systems. This included farmers markets, all shops, and restaurants. Even the ferry system in Sydney and many buses used this process. This made things quick and efficient regardless of whether we're using public transit, shopping, or purchasing something at a local cafe. Of course, it doesn't hurt to have some local currency for tips or to make things easier if you want to make small purchases. But you actually don't need to have too much cash with you. Of note, most of the public toilets in Australia and New Zealand are free, so there's no need to worry about having coins when going ashore like you do in Europe. The weather and packing for a cruise can be tricky regardless of the destination. Even monitoring weather apps before our travels, we still didn't pack appropriately for our Australia and New Zealand cruise. The weather during our time in Australia ended up being significantly warmer than we expected, with some days reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet, the weather in New Zealand was cloudy and overcast most of the time, with some wind and rain, making it feel cooler than the actual temperatures. So be sure to pack layers and a raincoat at the very least. When walking around Sydney, most will encounter the Overseas Passenger Terminal, located at the edge of Circle Quay in the Rocks area. However, this is not the only cruise terminal in Sydney. There's also the White Bay Cruise Terminal, which is about a 15-minute drive away from the Overseas Passenger Terminal. We actually didn't realize this until requesting our Uber on embarkation day when we were reviewing the cruise line's documentation and realized our ship was departing from the White Bay Cruise Terminal. While the Overseas Passenger Terminal is in the heart of Sydney, directly across from the Opera House, sailing from the White Bay Cruise Terminal does have its advantages. Generally, smaller ships depart from this terminal and then sail out under the Sydney Harbour Bridge, whereas larger ships leaving from the Overseas Passenger Terminal will have to back out and then sail by the Opera House, but not under the bridge. We don't know about you, but we were pretty excited to see koalas and kangaroos on this cruise. But we didn't realize that we would only see them in Australia and not New Zealand. With only a few Australian ports on our itinerary, we ended up switching around some of our excursions to fit in more animal encounters. If you're looking to interact with these adorable creatures, we recommend the Hillsville Sanctuary and Bonaron Wildlife Sanctuary. If you want more time at these locations or want to partake in any forfeit encounters, consider hiring a car to go on your own or booking a tour outside of the cruise line. Also, keep the weather in mind. These animals will likely be more active in cooler temperatures, so consider visiting these sanctuaries in the morning. If you're taking an Australia and New Zealand cruise, you'll be traveling the Tasman Sea at some point. This sea is known for being rough and unpredictable. Similar, but less intense to Drake's Passage heading to Antarctica, this is where currents from two different oceans meet. The region is also prone to strong winds and tropical cyclones, so it's best to be prepared. If you're prone to motion sickness, be sure to pack the proper aids, whether you take prescription medication or over-the-counter items like Dramamine or Bonine, or use C-bands. Make sure you have them at the ready, or you can use other natural remedies like ginger. If you plan to spend any time in your pre-cruise or post-cruise destination, you could be traveling for 3 weeks or more. Believe us, that's what we did. And while we are self-confessed overpackers and have been known to bring multiple suitcases with us, it's honestly not realistic to pack that much, even for us. So we suggest investigating your ship's laundry situation before setting sail. Some cruise lines, like Princess Cruises, have self-service laundry rooms, which are ideal. Even Carnival Splendor has self-service facilities where you can wash and dry your clothes for a nominal fee. If this option isn't available, many cruise lines will offer deals on wash and dry bags of laundry. For instance, our Holland America ship offered a fill-the-bag service, which was $25 USD, or unlimited laundry for the 14 days at $119 per cabin. If neither of these options are available, it could cost you a pretty penny if you have to pay per item for each article that needs to be laundered. Like many ports in Europe, a majority of the ports on our Australia and New Zealand cruise were considered working ports, with many of them used for the logging industry. Thus, cruise passengers are not allowed just to walk off the ship like you can do in most Caribbean or Alaskan ports. At many of our stops, complimentary shuttles took you into town. If you booked a shore excursion with the cruise line, you didn't have to worry about anything because the bus would pick you up at the ship and drop you off after the tour back at the ship. Now, in some certain instances, you had to purchase shuttle tickets to leave the port area if you did not have a tour booked with the cruise line. So if you plan to book private tours or just tour independently on your own or with other third-party vendors, be sure to inquire about meeting points with them and give yourself extra time to get from the ship to that meeting point, especially if it's first thing in the morning when all the other tours are leaving. Now, speaking of excursions, they are expensive in this region. As first-time visitors to Australia and New Zealand, we wanted to see and do as much as possible. This meant that we booked an excursion in almost every port of call, and these tours were often between $200 to $300 or more per person. So this can easily add thousands of dollars to your vacation costs, as it did for us. We suggest you do more research than we did and investigate options for all your sources. For instance, Shore Excursions Group offers similar options at prices up to 40% off the cruise line. They offer smaller group sizes and private tour options as well. And the best part is that they offer a return to ship guarantee, so you don't have to worry about missing the ship. In fact, you can take advantage of these great offers using our exclusive link to Shore Excursions Group in the description down below. Now, after taking our Australia and New Zealand cruise, we've realized it's okay not to book an excursion in every port. Most of these ports are very walkable once you take the shuttle into town. If your cruise line offers them, we suggest you attend the port talks. On our ship, Eli, our travel guide, did a fantastic job of highlighting what there was to do in each port. He even provided maps and practical information so you could feel confident exploring on your own. Now, of course, not budgeting appropriately for shore excursions is a big cruise mistake that you can make regardless of where you're cruising. There are also several other cruise mistakes that you need to avoid regardless of the destination. And lucky for you, right here on YouTube, we have our video detailing the 25 common cruise mistakes we still see individuals making, and the easy steps you can take to avoid them. Armed with that information, you'll be one step ahead of everyone else on board, and your next cruise will be smooth sailing.